Hey, this is Mathdoctor, and let's begin with the carbon and its compounds. In the previous lecture, we have discussed the concept of organic compounds, and now let's begin with the types of organic compounds. So, there are six types of organic compounds we're going to look in this chapter. One is hydrocarbons, and second one is haloalkanes, and third one is alcohol, and then aldehydes, and fifth one is ketones, and the last one is carboxylic acids, also known as organic acid. So we're going to look in this lecture hydrocarbons. Now let's begin with the hydrocarbons. So a compound made up of hydrogen and carbon only is called the hydrocarbon. Methane, ethene, and ethine all hydrocarbons because they are made up of only two elements, hydrogen and carbon. The most important natural source of hydrocarbons is petroleum or crude oil, which is obtained from the underground oil deposits by drilling oil wells. The natural gas which occurs above petroleum deposits also contain hydrocarbons. Now, there are two types of hydrocarbons which we're going to look in this lecture. One is saturated hydrocarbons, and the second one is unsaturated hydrocarbons. Now, let's begin with the saturated hydrocarbons. A hydrocarbon in which carbon atoms are connected by single bonds is called as the saturated hydrocarbons. Saturated hydrocarbon also called as the alkanes. We can say that an alkane is a hydrocarbon in which carbon atoms are connected by only single bond. There are no double or triple bond in an alkane. Thus, the hydrocarbons methane, ethane, propane, and butane has a series of compounds known as alkanes. And the names of all these saturated hydrocarbons end with "ane". The methane, ethane, and propane and butane are all saturated hydrocarbons which contains only carbon-carbon single bonds as shown in the following figure. The general formula of saturated hydrocarbon is CnH2n plus 2, where N is the number of carbon atoms in one molecule of the alkane. So if we have two carbon atoms, then N equals to 2, then we have the formula is C2H6. So the names of the names and the molecular formula of first five elements of hydrocarbons or alkanes are shown in the following table. The saturated hydrocarbons are chemically not very reactive. They are quite unreactive. Let's begin with the unsaturated hydrocarbons. A hydrocarbon in which two carbon atoms are connected by a double bond or triple bond is called as an unsaturated hydrocarbon. Ethene and ethine are two important unsaturated hydrocarbons because ethene contains a double bond and the ethine contains the triple bond between carbon atoms. A double bond is formed by the sharing of two pairs of electrons between the two carbon atoms, and triple bond is formed by sharing of three electron pairs between the carbon atoms. The unsaturated hydrocarbons are obtained mostly from the petroleum by the process called the cracking. Unsaturated hydrocarbons are of two types, those containing carbon-carbon double bonds or known as alkanes, and those containing the carbon-carbon triple bond are known as the alkynes. So let's discuss them in detail. An unsaturated hydrocarbons in which two carbon atoms are connected by a double bond is called as alkene. Thus, alkenes contain a double bond between two carbon atoms, which is formed by the sharing of two electron pairs. Ethene and propene are two alkenes because they contain a double bond between the two carbon atoms. Since an alkene has a double bond between the two carbon atoms, it is obvious that the simplest alkene will have two carbon atoms in the molecule. There can be no alkene containing only one carbon atom. The general formula for the alkene is CnH2n. So, where n denotes the number of carbon atoms. For the value of n equals to 2, we have the molecular formula as C2H4. And for the value of n equals to 3, we have molecular formula for alkene is C3H6. The names and molecular formula of the first three alkenes are given in the following table. So the simplest alkene is ethane, having a molecular formula of C2H4. The common name of ethene is ethylene. So that's the idea about the alkenes. So now let's discuss the alkynes. An unsaturated hydrocarbons in which two carbon atoms are connected by a triple bond is called as alkyne. Thus, alkyne contain a triple bond between two carbon atoms, which is formed by the sharing of three electron pairs or six electrons. So, ethine and propyne are alkynes because they contain a triple bond between two carbon atoms. And since an alkyne has a triple bond between two carbon atoms, it is obvious that simplest alkyne have two carbon atoms in its molecule. There can be no alkyne have only one carbon atom. So the general formula of alkynes is CnH2n-2. So where N is the number of carbon atoms in one molecule of the alkyne. If an alkyne has two carbon atoms, that is N equals to 2, then we have the formula is C2H2. And for the N equals to 3, we have the molecular formula of alkyne is C3H4. So the names and the molecular formula of the first three alkynes are shown in the following table. The simplest alkyne is ethine, having the molecular formula C2H2. The common name of ethine is acetylene. So the unsaturated hydrocarbons are more reactive than the saturated hydrocarbons. In other words, alkenes and alkynes are chemically more reactive than alkanes. So another point is to remember that the valency of each carbon atoms in an alkene, and alkynes is just the same, which is the 4. So that's the idea about the today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed my lecture on hydrocarbon. See you in the next video. Share with #Mathdoctor. Thank you.